We keep things rolling here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. It's going to be a jam-packed edition of the Sports Cubicle, and hopefully we are keeping you nice and warm as you enjoy some hot chocolate and spending some time around the fireplace, the heater. It was a cold few days here in Chicago, and one of the things that's been heating up, if you will, sorry about that, guys, but heating up is this media sports deals that have been going around. And one of the big stories has been what's going to happen to inside the NBA, that amazing pregame, postgame, and talk show that has really been the gold standard in sports media. What's going to happen to it after the NBA finds its new homes all across the different streaming platforms? Well, we have an answer to one of the big questions and what's going to happen to inside the NBA. This comes to us from ESPN.com. Inside the NBA to appear on ESPN ABC next season. Inside the NBA, which features the quartet of Ernie Johnson, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal, will appear on ESPN and ABC starting with the 2025-2026 season via partnership with TNT Sports and the NBA. This was announced on Monday. Except when the show goes on the road, TNT Sports will continue to independently produce Inside the NBA from its Atlanta-based studios over the term of the agreement. Johnson, Barkley, Smith, and O'Neal will remain with the show. The show, which has won 21 Sports Emmy Awards, will appear on ESPN and ABC surrounding high-profile live events, including ESPN's pregame, halftime, and postgame coverage of the NBA Finals on ABC, conference finals, NBA playoffs, all ABC games after January 1st, Christmas Day, opening week, the final week of the season, and other marquee live events. And you can check out the entire article over on ESPN. I want to get this statement. This is Inside the NBA is universally recognized as one of the best and most crucially impactful shows, ESPN chairman Jimmy Pitaro said in a statement. Quote, "We have long admired the immensely talented team and are thrilled to add their chemistry and knowledge to our robust set of NBA studio offers to super serve NBA fans like never before. The addition of Inside the NBA further solidifies ESPN as the preeminent destination for sports fans." That's again Jimmy Pitaro, the chairman of ESPN. Check out the entire article, Inside the NBA, to appear on ESPN ABC next season. So a few things to break down. One, ESPN for years, whether it's the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, WNBA, F1, NASCAR, UFC, they have always constantly tried to mimic what Inside the NBA has done. They have always wanted that show, that vibe, that chemistry, and nobody's been able to replicate it. There are some amazing post games, pre games, all across the land in all different walks of life when it comes to the sports world. Nobody touches Inside the NBA. And all of us in media, all of us that are fans, we know that's the gold standard. So this lawsuit, everything that was going on between Time Warner, Amazon, the ABC, the NBA, ABC, Disney, everything that was going on, to see this kind of trade happen, there's something to how big of an institute this show is, but also the mindset of ESPN. This isn't the first time they've done this. For me growing up, ESPN was original content, smart journalism, and the games. That's what it was about. That's not the case anymore. ESPN really isn't about news. ESPN's about entertainment. That's what sports is, right? Like let's call a spade a spade. Sports is entertainment. And it's entertaining, I should say. Entertainment's entertainment. Sports are sports. It's real life consequences. There's stakes. There's realness to it. But it's entertaining. And they package that. So they stopped doing news. And they started going with the first take type of way, the personalities, and just highlighting and putting the games on marquee, big time showcases. So when it comes to creating shows, they're now leasing out essentially. They're buying, they're renting property. We've seen it with the Pat McAfee show. And now you're seeing it with Inside the NBA. And the important thing to remember is if you were a fan of Pat McAfee, you didn't want ESPN, Disney, Mickey Mouse to mess with your show. I'm not necessarily a listener of the show. I love what they've done for the media to let people into it. There's not so much gatekeeping, and it's introduced it to a whole new generation. However you feel about all the other stuff, I mean, that's personal, and that's, I have my feelings on it, but they did buck the system and they did change it. And for them to be able to be leased out and keep it the way they want it to in-house, they produce it. It's their show. Same thing's happening with Inside the NBA. The brilliant minds, the brilliant producers and researchers and cameramen and women and people producing on the floor and in their ear set, and obviously the four legends on the desk, on the stage, that's all staying in-house. That's still going to be Warner. That's still going to be people in Atlanta. That is huge. That is something that you don't see very often. And it goes to show, again, the mindset of ESPN, where they're like, we'll pay for X, Y, or Z. Just give us the product. We don't want you to change. And it's funny, if you're a big fan of Inside the NBA, you've always heard all the trash talk that Charles Barkley has done about they're not going to work me like a dog and not pay me. This is, again, one of those things where we've heard Charles say that he feels like he's been traded as a player. He was traded from Turner Sports to ESPN. And while that might be the case when it comes to feeling, his paychecks are still to come from Time Warner. So a lot to digest, a lot to break down. But the things that I think you should put a bulletin on, right, to kind of remember, to keep in the back of your head as this continues, is who's producing this. The people who have been producing Inside the NBA, the pregame, the halftime, the postgame, all the great interviews, all the great gags, they're still doing it. All the people that have ran those cameras, all the people that ran that floor, all the people who've been in their ears, everybody, including the four, are staying together. That's a big thing to remember when you're watching this starting next season. Another thing is watch ESPN and what they're doing, how they're handling new media, how they're handling things internally. We know Around the Horn is ending. Think about it. That's an institute within ESPN that's ending. Original programming is finished in ESPN long-term. And that may break my heart in one way as somebody who grew up with that era, loving everything about PTI and Around the Horn and sports reporters and the original blocks of the Major League Baseball, NBA, and NFL programming they had. I love that early 2000s, mid 2000s, early teens version of ESPN. That's not what it is anymore. It's a new age. And this is a real big highlight of that. And highlight of media in general. From Netflix streaming, Amazon, and for where we're at right now. This is huge. And I don't think we'll ever see anything like that. And I don't think we'll ever see anything like the demand that people had to want to have this show continue and not cancel. Before we kind of wrap up this subject, John Skipper, who used to be the Jimmy Paterno of ESPN, if you listen to the Dan Lebitard show, or if you're familiar with the unrivaled 3-on-3 women's basketball league that Caitlin Clark just denied that she's not going to join, he's behind creating that. One of the things he said about running ESPN was that a pregame, a postgame, personalities didn't sell. They didn't draw ratings. It didn't make a difference. The game is what mattered. And I think he still has that mindset, but that is just what the chairman of ESPN thought at that time when he was bringing in these different sports and ESPN was going in different ways. So remember that mindset of ESPN and where we're at now, where ESPN is all personality driven, from their daytime television to their pre and post games to even sports centers, which nowadays, what is Sports Center? So it's a fascinating conversation. And I don't think we'll ever see it again, because I don't think there's anything in media quite like what Inside the NBA meant to basketball and sports fans alike. But we want to know your thoughts. What do you think? Inside the NBA will now be going to ESPN, is being leased out, is being out there for them to put on their NBA finals, a lot of their marquee games, and it will still be produced and ran and like normal by the TNT production team that's been with the four of them forever. So we want to know your thoughts, though. A very interesting story, as Inside the NBA will now be part of ESPN.